Hello, everyone. Today, I wanted to talk about a book that I actually read last year. Currently, I'm reading a longer book, so there's nothing that I've just read that I'm going to talk about. But I wanted to talk about Dream Snake by Vonda McIntyre because I was thinking about which books from the last couple of years that I'd read that I liked or reflected on fondly, and this was one of them. And this is one of the books from the big haul that I had last year, and I think it was like both interesting and fascinating and thought-provoking in many ways, but also just the setting and the story were really good. But it isn't what I thought it was going to be going into it. I thought it was going to be more in line with something new agey, neo-pagan kind of stuff, but no, it wasn't really that at all. It turns out it's actually a very engaging, well-written post-apocalyptic story about what's basically post-apocalyptic America, and this healer character named Snake, she modifies the venom of her own pet snakes to make medicine, and then we follow her travels throughout the country, and it's and there's various things. It starts out in the deserts, the sort of the wilderness, which has its own dangers, such as these irradiated areas, and then there are the sort of areas of resettlement, or I guess where civilization has gotten a stronghold again, and we travel into those areas as well. And then there's some elements of a little mysterious elements, like stuff left behind possibly from aliens. And I think that it all combines really nicely into a good like world. And I'm trying to articulate things, but I'm not the best at reviewing books, at least outside of writing stuff down. But one of the things I kind of felt like I was prepared for going into it was that this was going to be a so-called feminist SF work, but there was some of that, but I think it and some of that is evident in there, namely in that so in this kind of world now, there's, I guess, humans have this ability now to control their reproductive processes to a degree that they can prevent or even abort a pregnancy. A woman can. And so casual sex is sort of like kind of the norm in a lot of ways, and in one way this feels like a reversal of just some of the other kind of wish fulfillment fantasy that you find in SF written by men or featuring male characters. But it did raise an interesting question about the world, where I was trying to get a handle on this while reading the book, but if civilization is kind of coming back, or if it has these sort of these areas where it's better than others, it seemed like an ability like that almost would be frowned upon if they're the question of the human race repopulating or coming back, was important enough. And I was thinking about that, and it was never addressed in the book, but this is one of the things that I had considered. This seems like kind of like a luxury, and it has the state of the world stabilized that much where I guess it isn't a problem But that was one of the problems, because I would think of, like, in a post-apocalypse, people would be wanting to, uh, have children, but it was not a caveat that really held on to me or ruined things. There, in the story later on, and the story doesn't shy away from more painful realities of this world. For instance, one of the early sections of the book has Snake basically administering euthanasia to a woman who had suffered a fatal dose of radiation and was dying in pain, and so one of her snakes she administers to deliver that fatal venom. And then there's, you can and there's stuff like that too, the description of the radiation sickness and certain things later on in the more civilized areas, like there is some kind of slavery, and so that is, there's stuff like that which I thought was handled well, but not too softly. And the protagonist herself is very believable and likable. I really found myself, enjoying reading about her, and it's not like she has her flaws, and I felt like at the end of the book I had sort of, an affection for the book itself, the character, and so it succeeded in that regard. And it almost seems like, and I feel like when I told my wife about this, she kind of bore it out. It seems like sort of this another fantasy element is just having these trained serpents that can act as living jewelry or bracelets or a necklace, and but the other snakes, they have their venom, and Vonda McIntyre kind of describes some of the knowledge that Snake has about the way that the genetics can be recombined and whatnot, which is not surprising since I found out that Vonda McIntyre was a geneticist. Now the concepts of these domes later, I mentioned there were sort of these alien artifacts, so these environments. The later sort of the end of the book takes place in this place where there's sort of a cult, and they're kind of abusing these types of snakes, and so Snake goes in there and essentially undoes things, and I think you're at the end of the book. It was and by the end of the book, she has essentially a daughter, adopted daughter, and I think that there's not much else I wanted to say about it, but I just thought it was pretty worthwhile, and I can understand the praise that it gets for the most part. And I don't really put much stock into the Nebulas, the Hugos, and whatnot. It's usually I'll just read something that has a interesting premise, or if I'm in a used bookstore, I'm just buying stuff. Even if the cover's nice. In this case, it was just one of a plethora of other books that I had that I decided to read, but I recommend it, and I think that it left a pleasant feeling after I'd read it. It wasn't like a lot of similar novels. I think there's some of the humanity in it helped. And it was the cool premise, just having the snakes and themselves something you sort of care about as well. And there was enough kind of strangeness in the world, and at least like piecing together what had happened, but also exploring it with Snake. And you find, you know, by the end it was just kind of like a rewarding journey. So that'll do it for that. I will be going to so the 707s, a group of friends who all write together. We are heading out on our annual meetup or writers retreat, whatever we call it, and we're going to be in Cincinnati hanging out, writing, and after that I might have another video this week just while I'm there. Definitely going to try and hit up a used bookstore, and there's one there that I'm going to go to. So, all right, well, thanks for watching and have a good day.